Okay, so that was the first video, and then my phone died. Now I'm making the second one. So anyway, so that's the analogy with the house. So right, we understand that in the physical world, buying a product that works with a thing does not give you ownership of that thing. Now, if we take this into the software world and treat it exactly the same, right, and think about these, really think about this specific licensing instance of a Windows workstation and a Windows server. The way to think of it is, Microsoft gives you workstation at a very low cost per machine, or you can argue it's high cost. It doesn't matter, right? It's a cost you agree to for an extremely limited amount of licensing. And if you want to do more than that, you have to pay for Windows Server licensing, and even that comes in tiers, and depending on how you want to use it. So all use of Windows software and lots of other software out there, right, is based on you agree to pay for how you're going to use it. In some cases, they enforce this. In some cases, they trust you. And in the cases of Microsoft products, almost always, they do not enforce anything. They simply trust you, right? You agree this is what you have to pay. You agree this is how you're going to use it. And then they give you a price, or you get a price based on that agreement, right? So when you're deploying Windows Workstation, you are, from the EULA, agreeing not to try to use it as a server, as an example, right? So then, if you then agree to that and then immediately go out and use it as a server, clearly what you've done is pirated Windows Server, right? That's how the law will look at it. That's how Microsoft looks at it. That's what's going on, right? They're really the same product under the hood. It's the licensing that makes them different. Yeah, they change a little bit on the... It's the licensing that makes them different. So, if you then think about if you think about big products, right, it's real easy to feel like, oh, I went to this big multi-billion-dollar vendor, let's say SAP, right? I go to, because they don't deploy this, so it doesn't matter. So SAP, I bought this $100,000 product from SAP, and I said, will this run on Windows Server? They say, yeah. So I deploy it, great, and you kind of know you have to license Windows Server. But if you went to SAP and you said, hey, can I deploy this on Windows Workstation? They would go, sure, right? And then you deploy it on Windows Workstation, and it might kind of feel like, because SAP said so, it must be okay to run it on Windows Server Workstation. The problem is that SAP, one, doesn't know. It's not their responsibility. They don't know what your deal with Microsoft is. They don't know if you worked out some special thing. They don't know if you're in a jurisdiction where that doesn't... They don't know, right? They're not responsible. They don't know. It's not their position, right? They're a third party. They have nothing to do with the situation. They're like the guy with the hammer. They know that this works with nails regardless of what kind of house the nail is in. So when you ask them, will this work there? That is very different from, will you provide licensing guidance for me, right? One, they know it will work, and two, they have there's no possibility of them having that licensing guidance for you. They're not your IT department, they're not Microsoft. Those are the only two possible people, the only two players who can know your licensing situation. Okay, so if we think about this in a different context, though, let's say you wanted to start a text file company. You sell text files, right? And this text file simply contains 5 words, how are you today? I guess that's not 5 words. Anyway, so this text file, it's just a text file. You sell it for a penny, right? And you say, okay, so I'm going to buy this for a penny. Well, where does it run? Well, you can open this text file on Windows Workstation. Can I open it on Windows Server? Absolutely, you can open it on Windows Server. If that, by purchasing a third-party product that can work on different things, does it give you the right to those things, right? And this is where it's a little bit funny. Now I realize this is the opposite scenario, right? But it's exposing what's going on. If you wanted to get access to Windows Server licensing, and all it took was a third party selling you something that could work in both situations, and then you could deploy the cheaper as the more expensive, everyone would go out and buy a 1 penny product from a vendor who said it worked everywhere, and ta-da, your licensing is now, with Microsoft, is now removed, right? You would simply buy the cheapest 1 penny product. There would be companies that make decent amounts of money. You actually would make decent amounts of money, right? Because every company on earth would pay for this if this worked. They would all pay 1 penny, get this text file, and deploy it, and then tell Microsoft, sorry, the third party said we could get your products for free because we spent 1 penny with them, and Microsoft would be, oh, well, I guess that's how it works. But it's not how it works, right? The thing you're getting from Microsoft is from Microsoft. No third party has any say whatsoever. They don't have guidance, they don't have advice, they don't have legal rights or anything to it. And so picturing how you're allowed to use products from one company based on the purchase from another company doesn't make sense. But it is pretty easy to get misled when you're dealing with really big expensive products that are especially many times if you're dealing with an SAP at $100,000 and you're talking about will this deploy on $100 or an $800 OS, it may seem like, well, I'm spending $100,000. One, they must know. Two, they must be advising me. Three, they must be in a decision making role, right? None of that's true, but it can feel that way because of the size of the purchase and the kind of company you're dealing with. But if you take it to the logical extreme of if that was the case, vendors would just sell a one penny product to give you a workaround. It's like, oh, obviously that can't be the case, right? So think of it that way. And this is a general rule. When you're looking to try to figure out if something is a gray area, take it to the extremes and say, does it make sense at the logical extremes? If it has two different answers at different logical extremes, then look for why something in the middle might be one thing or the other. But if it's the same at both extremes, then chances are in the middle, it's going to be the same. So that's the way to think about it. Whether you're looking at it as an abstraction and houses and hammers, or you're looking at it in concretes and who is your licensing with and why would a third party have any say? Why would Microsoft lose money because a third party charged you a lot of money, right? That doesn't make any sense. Why would Microsoft be the one losing in this situation? It doesn't make sense. That's not how it works, right? Your agreement to purchase things from Microsoft is exclusively between you and Microsoft. That purchase is required by a third party for their product to work, it's neither here nor there. That's simply something that they require. And you can obviously abstract that to, I'm buying a child seat for my car. You ask what kind of car this works in. You don't get a free version of that car. That you don't get to go to your BMW dealer and say, sorry, I bought this child seat at Walmart. It says it works in a BMW 3 Series, so I'm driving off of this 3 Series. It's mine now, right? That doesn't work that way, but that's how we often treat software, often because the scale of cost is so different, right? And we so often falsely associate advisory and consulting with purchasing, right? Which is just a thing that happens in IT, right? We talk about it all the time. We go to someone, they call themselves an MSP, we think of them as an MSP, they're actually a salesperson, right? They're not giving you advice, they're trying to sell you something. And we conflate this all the time, whether we being IT people make this mistake and we being small businesses, companies who are buying products make this mistake all the time. It's one of the stock mistakes that we talk about, is just the myths of how we think about IT. That's what's being applied here, right? That same, we picture a big vendor as giving us advice when they're not. They're simply selling us a product and giving us a list of things where it technically works. The person who's giving us that list is in no way connected to anybody who could ever be giving us advice in any possible way.